So today I'm going to show you how to make a sweet pastry for a 9.5-inch flan case. On the table I have my ingredients, so let's go through them. I've got 160 grams of plain flour. I've got 45 grams of vanilla sugar. If you don't have vanilla sugar, then you can use caster sugar. I've got 1 whole egg, but we're only going to use the egg yolk in this recipe. And we've got 115 grams of unsalted butter. And then finally we have some ice cold water, which we may use. Now to make the pastry, we're first going to take our sugar and room temperature unsalted butter. You want it to be reasonably soft but not melted, so it creams more quickly. Now I can do this by hand, but if you have a stand mixer it will be quicker. So we're just going to mix this and cream it on a low speed. So I've creamed my butter and sugar for about 3 minutes on a medium-high speed, and you can see that it's quite a bit lighter now because it's had some air beaten into it, which is going to make the pastry really melt in your mouth. So we just want to scrape down the butter and sugar mixture back into the bowl, and then we're going to add our flour on a low speed and incorporate it. We'll put it all in. I've mixed the flour now for a couple of minutes into the butter mixture, and you can see that it's starting to become a crumb mixture, which is what you're looking for. So I want to now scrape the bowl down and the paddle. It's important to scrape the butter off the paddle, and then mix it again for another couple of minutes. So I've mixed the flour mixture into the butter for about 2 more minutes on a low speed, and you can see now I have a nice crumb consistency. So we'll just take our egg, our large egg, and we're going to crack it and carefully make sure that we don't get any egg yolk into the white, and we're going to save the white and use it for something else. And then we'll put our egg yolk in there, and we're also going to at the same time add 1 tablespoon of iced water, and then put it back on a low speed. So we decided to add a 2nd tablespoon of water because it needs a little bit more moisture to bring the crumbs of the pastry together. And we'll just mix that again on a low speed. So now we have the correct texture we're looking for. It's just enough moisture to bring it together. So now we're going to cling wrap that and chill it down for 30 minutes to let it rest before we roll it. So our sweet pastry has had 30 minutes in the fridge to rest a little bit, and now we're going to roll it. But because it's quite, it's prone to break up when you make something like this kind of pastry, we're going to show you a little trick using some cling film, lightly dusted with flour, and then we're going to cover it with some more cling film. And obviously we need the cling film to be as wide as we think the tart shell is going to end up. And then we're going to roll it out underneath this cling film to stop it from breaking up. Right, so we're just gently going to work it around, and then when we want to turn the pastry, we want to turn the whole thing, keep it under the cling film, then roll it a bit more this way. So we're gently progressing towards the size we want. There won't be much in the way of excess pastry, and we do want the pastry to be quite thin. So we just need to gently do this, and remember we want to keep in mind the size of our tin, and we need enough for to come up the edges, so we need it just a little bit more yet. So we have it now the size we want it. So the next move is I've taken the one part of the cling film out the way so you can see how the pastry looks, and the next thing we want to put it obviously into our cake tart tin, So we want to transfer it. So to do that, you want to lightly flour your rolling pin so that when you unroll it from the rolling pin, it won't stick to the rolling pin. So we've laid the pastry gently across the tart tin, removing the rolling pin out of the way, and now we're just going to very gently ease the edges of the pastry into the sides of your flan dish. If it seems to be a little bit thinner in places, push it down a little bit, because we want the edge to be reasonably high, but we also want it to be a regular thickness all the way around. And like this part here, it's a little bit thin, so I might steal a little pastry there and just put it in to that edge, so the thickness of the edge is the same all around. And then when we're happy with the edges, we're just going to take the rolling pin and roll it straight across. Just remove the excess. And our pastry. And now we want to use a fork, and we would just want to prick the pastry all over, and this is to stop the pastry from rising when we blind bake it. We were going to blind bake it to par cook it before we put our chocolate filling inside. So now we have the pastry forked, and we want to cover it with a paper circle made from parchment paper or greaseproof paper, which I've cut into a circle. Just lay that down on top of the pastry, and then you want to weigh that down. I have some baking beans here. If you don't have baking beans, you can use rice or some kind of dried bean. And we're going to bake that in a preheated oven of 180 degrees fan assisted. So our pastry case has had 16 minutes in the oven at 180 degrees. And we've removed the paper circle and the baking beans, and now we want to put it back in the oven for a final 4 minutes. So I've just removed the pastry case from the oven. It's had that extra 4 minutes, and you can see that it's nicely and evenly cooked in the centre, and now it's ready for the filling. So on my table I have the ingredients for the chocolate filling for my baked chocolate tart. So let's go through them. We've got some milk chocolate, and we're going to take half this bar, which is 50 grams. And this milk chocolate is particularly good because it has a very high level of cocoa solids, so it's really delicious. We've got 200 grams of extra dark chocolate. We've got 1 egg white. We've got 2 large eggs. We've got a pinch of salt. We've got 2 tablespoons of vanilla sugar. If you don't have vanilla sugar, then caster sugar will be fine. And finally, we have 300 milliliters of double cream, and we're going to take 3 tablespoons out of the 300 milliliters and save that for the glaze. The first step in making our chocolate filling is to take our double cream and bring it up to a boil. Now I've taken out 3 tablespoons from our 300 milliliters of double cream, and the rest of it we're going to pour it into a non-stick pan and bring it to a boil. So next we're going to take our 2 large eggs and add them to our egg white that we had left over. And then we're going to add our 2 tablespoons of vanilla sugar. And we're going to whisk that so that it's nice and mixed in before we add it to our melted chocolate and cream. So we've just whisked up the eggs with the sugar. We don't need it to be beaten very much. That's sufficient. And now we're going to add our little pinch of salt. Doesn't need to be a lot of salt, just a little pinch of salt. It'll add another dimension to the flavour of the chocolate. So cream is boiling, so now we're going to pour it onto our chocolate and let it sit for a couple of minutes to start melting the chocolate. So the chocolate has had the cream on it for about 3-4 minutes now. We're just going to start stirring that in. And we want to make sure that there's no lumps in the chocolate before we add our egg mixture to it, because once we add our eggs, it's of course going to cool down. So now we're ready to start adding our egg mixture. We're going to add our egg mixture gradually. Now we're adding the final amount of egg. I find it easier to use a spatula than a whisk to whisk it in. And just keep turning that mixture over with the spatula. We don't want to put a lot of air into it, because otherwise we'll get air in the top of the chocolate tart, which we don't want to do. You can see it's lovely and silky smooth. That's what we're looking for. Make sure we don't lose any of our ingredients. Let's give that one final stir. And now we are ready to pour our mixture into our pastry. So now we're going to start filling our tart shell with the chocolate mix. Make sure you don't waste any. And it should be soft enough, as mine is, to spread itself out. Okay, that's good. Now what we want to do next, we want to just shake it a little bit to smooth it out. And if we see any air bubbles coming to the top, then we're going to take a toothpick, and we just want to put the toothpick in to burst any of those bubbles, because we want our surface as smooth as we can get it, so that when we put the glaze on, the glaze will run smoothly over the tart. So it's ready to go into the oven. It's going to go back into the oven at 180 degrees and bake. So the chocolate tart has had 22 minutes in the oven at 180 degrees on the middle shelf, because whenever you're cooking any kind of chocolate dessert, you don't necessarily want to have it on the top shelf, because it may get too brown before it's cooked. But you want a slight amount of jiggle left in the mixture. You don't want it really baked very hard. And we're going to let this cool down now for an hour before we put the glaze on. So on my table I have the ingredients to make our chocolate glaze for our chocolate tart. And this is really simple. I've got 3 tablespoons of double cream. We've got 70 grams of dark chocolate. We're going to use 1 tablespoon of golden syrup. For my American fans that can't get golden syrup, you can use corn syrup. And we've got some hot water. We'll add at least 1 tablespoon of hot water to the mixture. So the first thing we're going to do is add a tablespoon of golden syrup into our double cream. Okay, and we want to stir this around a little bit just to mix that syrup in with the cream. And then, because this is a small quantity, we are going to cling wrap this container and put it in the microwave for about 45 seconds just to bring it up until it's simmering. So the cream and the golden syrup have had 40 seconds in the microwave and it's nice and hot. Came to a simmer. So I'm now going to pour it onto our chocolate and just stir that into our chocolate to melt our dark chocolate. And now finally we're going to add 1 tablespoon of hot water and work that into the chocolate and cream mixture. It's just going to give us our pouring consistency. make it really shiny. You can see that really nice dark shiny appearance. And now we're ready to pour this on. I think actually I'm going to add another half tablespoon, just half a tablespoon more of water so that it's thin enough to pour onto our tart. That's good, that's really good. You can see that texture, how it flows. And we just need to put this on. So now I'm using a palette knife just to push that glaze around to the edges. I'm just going to wet my palette knife in hot water and give it a final smooth over. Okay, there we are. So I've marked out my chocolate tart into 8 portions. Of course, if you want bigger portions, you can mark it out into 6. And I'm going to finish this with some fresh strawberries that I'm going to dip into some melted white chocolate. So we've just got the strawberries here. And we don't want to cover the whole of the strawberry, we just want to cover the bottom half. Just about like that. And we just take the chocolate and we're going to put it this way around, I think. And then we'll do another one. And tilt the bowl to make sure that you get the chocolate in roughly the same place. And then wipe that excess chocolate off. And another one on. And then turn the tart round so it make it easy for yourself as you do this. So you're not dripping on the cake. And we repeat it for all the other slices. And here we have our delicious baked chocolate tart. Full of chocolate flavour and yet not too heavy because we bake the chocolate rather than make a chocolate tart with a ganache. And finally we finished and decorated it with our strawberries dipped in white chocolate. Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe. Enjoy.